Yolked. I'm your host, John Serenitas. And as always, I'm joined by our lead college football writer, Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well. I'm a little bummed that we're already here, that there's nothing left to talk about, really, in a lot of
After this
senses.
weekend.
Yeah, like after this weekend.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. If
True.
UNH and either URI or Central Connecticut State win, we'll
Right.
still have more football, and we're going to have UConn and BC bowl games. So
Right.
we still have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I guess I just mean that full menu, like of a buffet, right? Like the real nitty gritty of the Stonehill taking on Wagner. Like we're losing that, and that's my biggest blow, I think. So other than that, doing okay. Hope you're doing
after
all
going
right
1-10, some Stonehill fans are probably saying to themselves, "I'm okay with that."
Right? Yeah, we don't need them. Yeah.
Do want to remind you that if you are looking to add a safe and effective form of protein into your workout routine, then Yolked is the product for you at only 47 calories per packet. It's delicious, it's safe, and it's effective. It's made from real egg yolks, and this vanilla flavor here tastes like birthday cake. Visit yolked.com today for more information. I love this product. I mean, I think it's hard to find protein in terms of adding protein to your routine. It's hard to find safe and effective forms of protein that you can add to your routine. This product is that. I'm not just saying it because they sponsor this show. I believe in the product. I've used the product. I know a lot of people, particularly coaches, who have used the product with their teams. I can't say enough about it. Visit yolk.com today, and you can see what the different flavors they have on available. You can order online. Coaches, if you want to order for your teams, again, this is safe for young people to have, particularly your high school athletes. You can also check and see what they have for team deals. So visit yolk.com today for more information. And as you mentioned, Ryan, the college football season effectively wrapped up this past weekend, but we still got plenty of football to play. First of all, we have 3 FCS teams that qualified for the FCS playoffs. So congratulations to URI, UNH, and Central Connecticut State. Of course, URI qualified by winning the CAA or winning a share of the CAA, and they also won 10 games. Central Connecticut State qualified by winning the NEC. They beat Duquesne. And UNH got an at-large bid after finishing 8-4. They're going to host UT Martin on Saturday in Durham. Congratulations to those programs. We're going to be previewing those playoff games, as well as looking ahead to Pitt at BC and the big one out in Amherst this weekend, UConn at UMass in the rivalry game, what I think is going to be a really good game. But before we do that, I do want to just look back on the weekend that was. Obviously, the big story, in my opinion, throughout the season this year has been the University of Rhode Island and what Jim Fleming and his coaching staff have done there. The Rams beating Bryant 35-21 to win a share of the CAA and to get their first playoff bid in 39 years. It's a great time to be on campus down in Kingston. They're hosting Central Connecticut State on Saturday. It's going to be a great atmosphere there, but I don't think you could say enough good things about the job that Jim Fleming and his staff have done this year with this program.
Yeah, I mean, this is a program that, obviously, first time since 1985, but the fact that, how many conversations were had, right, about, do we drop football at a certain point, right? And not too much in the recent memory with how great Jim Fleming's done, but there were times, right, within the last, 15, 20 years of, is this worth it? Is this worth it? Should we drop to the NEC, right, out of the CAA at one point? So the fact that they're here and all the hard work they've had of the last few years, I'm just so stoked for Rams fans. I think they belong here. There is an opportunity for URI to have a good football program, and he's done exactly that, right? The missing X factor, right? At running back, Malik ran another incredible game, 3 touchdowns, 204 yards. I'm just thrilled for him, right? And, I'm kind of bummed they're playing Central Connecticut because you want to see the New England teams get kind of, dispersed out a little bit. But I think it's also great for a potential rivalry to build in the future, right? You're going to get a lot of fans there because it's not very far, right? So I'm over the moon for him. It kind of stinks it's fallen on a holiday weekend. So I really hope students get back early in time to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I do too. I wish they were playing this game maybe a week after, but I think to your point, Malik Grant, 3 rushing touchdowns, a receiving touchdown. He really became the focal point of that offense. And I don't think people realized in the spring when they got him, they got Carson Primrose from Sacred Heart, both transferred. And at one point, Arsene Giles was also committed to transfer there, and then he ended up at UMass. But those three, at least Grant and Primrose, were two impact players of this program. But to your point, that offense has run through Malik Grant all year. 5'9", 190 pounds. You look at him, he doesn't impress you physically, but man, is he tough, and he runs hard, and he's a grinder, and he's a back that can absorb 30 carries a game. He did that for this program this year. He won that starting running back job. He was that bell cow they needed. And they, like I said, ran the offense through him. And, I covered that game on Saturday against Bryant. And for me, when I look at this URI offense, I mean, the sauce is simple here. The quarterbacks aren't asked to do a lot. They're going to run the football. They're going to ball control you. The expectation is that you're going to run some RPOs, some drop back passes. You're going to complete some passes, high percentage type throws. They've got talent on the outside with Marquise Buchanan and Greg Gaines III. But what this URI team did this season to go 10-2, win a share of the CAA, and doing the way they did it. And look, they did it the old-fashioned way. They ran the football and played good defense. I mean, their front can get after opposing quarterbacks. A.J. Pena and company can get consistent pressure. This is a good football team, and I think Central Connecticut is going to have their hands full with them, but I also think it's going to be a really close game. We're going to get into that here in a few minutes. Central Connecticut State, of course, beating Duquesne 21-14. The defense once again leads the way for the Blue Devils. Elijah Howard and the running game do their part. What a turnaround season for Adam Lechtenberg and that staff in only his second year at the helm. He gets the Blue Devils to an NEC title game in essence. They win the NEC. They make the FCS playoffs. I mean, look, I've been saying this all year, Ryan. This is a battle-tested program, and they proved that. They proved that. They went out and they played a great schedule. Central Michigan, UMass, Yale, Dartmouth. They played a really good schedule, and I think that schedule propelled them to this point because when they got into conference play, they were battle-tested. They had played in a bunch of close games. Lechtenberg and his staff knew what they had with this team, and it paid dividends for them down the stretch, and they ended up winning a conference championship, and now they have a shot at a national championship.
Yeah, and this is a program that has struggled, right? Especially last year, but it's just I think it shows. I think there's a lot of trends, it seems, in football right now about the running back position in some ways, right? Like, oh, is it not as important? But we're seeing two teams in Central Connecticut State and URI and so many others where, no, running back matters. It matters a lot. And if you have someone that is a game changer like that, it can kind of hide some things. It allows you to do some things differently, right? I mean, Brady Olson did what he's supposed to do this season, right? He threw for around 50%. He didn't turn the ball over too much, but he didn't win them a lot of games, but he was a game manager, and you can do that when you have someone like Elijah Howard, right? It also helps when you're playing Duquesne, and again, I could not believe this in a stat line when I saw that Darius Parantes threw 7 interceptions. Shout out to the Blue Devils defense, but a couple of those had to have just been, what the heck are you doing, right? But that's a crazy amount of picks. So at the end of the day, I'm pumped for them. Again, like I said, I'm a little bummed that they're playing URI, but should be a good game.
And of course, the University of New Hampshire also qualified for the FCS playoffs. They retained the Bryce Collin Musket with a 27-9 win over rival Maine to finish 8-4 in the season. The Wildcats will be hosting UT Martin on Saturday in Durham. The winner of that game will go on to play Montana State. But look, about a month ago, UNH was struggling, and you wondered, okay, what direction is this going to go in? How are they going to finish? And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they win 3 in a row. They get back on track. Impressive win over a Maine team that was much better this year than the last 2 years. And they're 8-4, and they get an at-large bid. And look, most people don't know this, but this is the 16th time in the last 20 years that this UNH football program has made the FCS playoffs. That should tell you something here. That should tell you the job that Sean McDonald and his staff did, and that should tell you the job that Ricky Santos and his staff are doing. Kudos to them. A big win for them. Like I said, they retain the Bryce Collin Musket. They win the rivalry game, and now they have a shot to compete for national title. They will have their hands full against UT Martin on Saturday. But Ryan, given the way this team is playing right now, Seth Morgan is back. They're running the football better. We know that the passing game can make big plays. But I think what's gotten lost in all this is the play of their defense. Yeah. Dylan Ruiz, Josiah Silver, that front getting after people. This is a pretty good football team. On the back end, you got Wandy Owens and that talented secondary. They can win on Saturday, and I think that their style of play travels. They could potentially, if they win Saturday, they could give Montana State fits the following weekend. So UNH, a team that you don't want to play in these playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I can't state enough the job that Garrett Gillick's done up in Durham, right? They kind of had a tough year last year, like on defense, but they just 9 points to a Black Bears team that's done pretty well this year, right? Carter Peavy's been all right? They've got a very good wide receiver.
Their offense has been very good.
Yeah,
Montego Moss had a big year for them.
Right, so to come in and just kind of shut them down like that, I think was impressive. And I think for Santos, who's such a great identifier of talent, right? Like Seth Morgan coming in here and doing a very solid job this year. Same with, of course, Logan Tomlinson, but Josiah Silver, I believe, was just named CAA Defensive Player of the Year, right? I mean, for how amazing he's been. And also shout out to Caleb Mead, who's a cornerback who's mostly played on special teams, had 19 carries, 113 yards, and a touchdown on Saturday, right? They've completely been decimated in the run game. And you have a guy come in who really hasn't done that, probably since high school, and drops 113 on you. I don't know if that says more about Maine, but the fact that UNH is just able to make things happen, right? And like you said, I think that they have the ability, as long as they get past UT Martin, to do a little damage.
They do. And like I said, I think that this is a team, and you could say the same thing about URI, that these are going to be teams that are going to be tough outs because of their style of play and because they play really good defense and they're opportunistic on offense. I think that they could be tough outs. And as far as Central Connecticut State is concerned, look, if they win on Saturday, if you can go down to Kingston and beat URI, they can go on the road and give Mercer some problems. So, Again, their schedule has paid dividends for them. But a great, great weekend for FCS football in New England to get 3 teams in the FCS playoffs. Remember, it's only, it's not a huge field. So to be able to get 3 teams out of the same region, that's pretty impressive. Ivy League wrapped up their season this weekend. I mean, you almost feel bad for Harvard. They ended up losing the game. You were there, 34-29. They had sole ownership of an Ivy League title in their hands, and they fumbled it away. And I think that if you're a Harvard Crimson football fan, that's really disappointing. Yale has obviously had their number. I believe that's what, they won 3 in a row now against them.
Yeah.
I just, again, you win and you win the Ivy League outright. It was a simple scenario. And unfortunately for the Crimson, they fell short. Hat tip to Tony Reno and the Bulldogs. They were the hottest team in the Ivy League down the stretch. They played some terrific football, and they went on the road and got it done against their rival and denied them sole possession of an Ivy League title.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of a weird post-game setup. Yale did their own thing. They didn't come up with Harvard like they usually do, so I would have loved to hear from Tony Reno and them after that amazing game. But I'll tell you, Andrew Orrick, they were dejected, right? I've never seen a group of people be so mad that they have a share of a conference title. And I get it, right? I mean, they were effectively 2 games away. I mean, without that Brown slip up, you're talking about potentially coming out of that game undefeated, and you come out and you lose to your rival like this. You left so many plays in the field, but Reno they just had their number on defense. I know Harvard had 29 points, but 22 came in that fourth quarter, and they're coming back. Before that, 7 points through 3 quarters. They couldn't move the ball. Jaden Craig, I think, really struggled. They couldn't run the ball, and that's just full credit to Yale. They were swarming them, right? They had a pick 6 on defense. Grant Jordan looked great, able to move the ball, and Joshua Pitzenberger and David Pentelis had an excellent game. Just every time on third down you needed a big play, Pentelis was there. So, yeah, it sucks for Harvard because it's just like, yeah, you hang the banner, you have a share of it, but you had it within your grasp. But maybe this is where you talk about the FCS playoffs, and it's like, maybe this doesn't sting as much if you are playing this weekend, right? So maybe there will be more talk in the future about them joining. Who knows? But
yeah, no, I agree. And of course, Dartmouth gained a share of an Ivy League title by beating Brown 56-28, a dominant performance for the Big Green a week after losing at Cornell. For the second straight year, Sammy McCorkle leads the Big Green to a share of an Ivy League title. And I said this last night on the New England Football Show, and I'll say it to you. I don't think you could say enough good things about the job that McCorkle has done with this program to take over under the circumstances that he did last year, to win a share of the Ivy League, and then to come back, follow that up with an 8-2 season and win a share of it again. I mean, again, we talk about hat tipping all the time. Hat tip to Coach McCorkle and that Dartmouth staff. Another tremendous season for Big Green.
Yeah, I mean, you think about where they were last year and they're able to rally and how they did it again this year. Did stink today. I think, we see this a lot in Ivy League especially, but, seen a lot of names start to pop in the transfer portal. Jackson Proctor.
Well, they're all grad, right? They're grad transfers. A lot of familiar names have hit the portal here the last 2 years.
And a lot of talent. I mean, Proctor had, almost 600 yards of offense, or 500 rather yards of offense on his own, right? 7 touchdowns just himself. So that's a team's gonna be very lucky about that. But you've got to be kind of kicking yourself at your Dartmouth, thinking about losing that Harvard game earlier in the year, because that really was the game that it kind of ended up coming down to. But yeah, I mean, shout out to them. Tough again, another year for the Brown Bears, despite how they finished. So, it's going to be tough moving on next year.
Yeah, for them, I mean, to go from 5-5 to 3-7 is really disappointing. I know, talking to people around the program during training camp, there was a real feel that this team had the potential to possibly be a sleeper in the Ivy League, and maybe they make a run. Maybe they're in it to gain a share of it by the end of the season. Really disappointing to see them take a couple steps back here and not be the program we thought they were going to be. We thought they were going to be better than this. It's a disappointing finish to a season that, unfortunately, after they beat Harvard, I think a lot of people thought, okay, that's the signature win that James Perry and this coaching staff needed. Let's see now if they could capitalize on it. And I said it to anybody within an earshot. I said it to you after that game. Yeah. They cannot live off of this game the rest of the season. Enjoy it Saturday night, but move on Sunday morning and get ready for the next week. And they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And I think at the end of the day, they thought that was, their season. And I'm not saying that they thought this in terms of people told me this, but the way they played, they never really got over that one. They emptied the bucket in that one and weren't the same team after that. So you hope that Perry's been there long enough now that they need to make more inroads and they need to get better. 3-7 is not good enough. Of course, the indoor facility that is currently being built on campus will be open for next season. So certainly that will help with recruiting. That will help with preparation. But make no mistake about it, a disappointing season nonetheless in Providence for the Black Bears. And just staying with the CAA, obviously earlier we had talked about URI's big win over Bryant, disappointing season for Bryant. They finished 2-9. I don't know what's going to happen there next. I think that the expectation was that it could be a potentially long season moving into the CAA. I'm not sure that people thought it was going to be this long, though. Despite having over 40 new faces, I do think that the expectation was that even in the CAA, this team can compete and win more than 2 games. But a big offseason looming there nonetheless for the Bryant Bulldogs. We talked about Maine earlier. Lot of good, lots of positives to take away from a 5-7 season. About as many as you could take away from a 5-7 season if you're Jordan Stevens and that staff. You hope that they build on it. Maine has always been a strong program in the portal. I'm sure they'll be active in the portal there. Now, next up, we're going to talk about a school that's near and dear to your heart, the alma mater. Look, it was a tumultuous week last week, obviously, with the firing of Don Brown, Shane Montgomery taking over for him. Normally, I would say when a team loses 59-21, there aren't that many positives to take out of it. But you know what? They played pretty well in the first half. Kirby Smart was very complimentary after the game and even yesterday in his weekly press conference. They didn't quit. I mean, they still had 59 hung up on them, but they didn't quit. They battled. For guys that are looking at this program as potential future head coaches, some positives there that you can take away.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I was looking back at my beginning of the season predictions. I think I had this 62-7, and I think in my preview I had like 65-3 or something. And it doesn't really surprise me. That just kind of is what happens when they play SEC teams. It's one of the weirdest things, right? There's been so many graphics that have come out since that game that UMass was one of the only teams to score 20 or more points against Georgia all season. And that's talking SEC teams, right? Like I think it's like them and Texas were the only ones to score more than 20 points, which is kind of funny to think about. I mean, Georgia's kind of mailed in. They're just trying to get to the college football playoff at this point. So maybe there's a little bit of that. They're kind of sleepwalking. But the fact that it was 31-21 at a certain point, it's like you know that, hey, they're not going to win here. And of course, they went on to score, however many unanswered points. But I was really proud of them because they had every reason to roll over this week, and they didn't. And I think it's just so emblematic of what sucks about supporting this program is you're just like, man, look at the heart they had today. Why can't they beat Toledo and Buffalo? Like, that's just what I always keep coming back to. As excited as I was to see this, I'm just always like, why can they just not do it in those moments? So I was very proud of him. I'm happy for Shane Montgomery. A lot of fans are maybe talking about bringing him in full time. I don't really know how I feel about that after one game. We'll see how this weekend goes. They gave Georgia a hard time. They didn't make it easy on them, especially those first few drives. They were in it, so.
And of course, this week they're going to take on rival UConn in the season finale in Amherst. You'll be there for that one. UConn losing to Syracuse 31-24. Look, this was a pretty good game, a game that could have gone either way. It was 21-14 at the half, and Syracuse was able to pull away. In the end, it ended up winning 31-24. For UConn, it's a game they could have won. I think if they had played better in spots, they would have won the game. Nonetheless, you're 7-4, and you're going into the season finale against a UMass team that you're better than. And as long as you come to play, you should finish with 8 wins, which would be the most wins since 2010 for this program. And you should have a shot at a relatively decent bowl game. But nonetheless, this was a disappointing performance for a UConn team that has played well most of the season.
Yeah, I think the X factor there was, I think Syracuse did a good job of limiting the run game, which is where UConn really thrives.
124 yards rushing. That's it collectively.
Yeah.
Their running game, though, I will say this. Their running game has not been great the last 4 or 5 weeks. This is a team that's built on their offensive line and their running game. Yeah. This is the identity that Jim Mora wanted to develop when he took over the program. I think they were that under Nick Charlton, but under Gordy Samus this season, they've been more balanced, but the running game has not been as good as we've seen. I mean, we saw flashes of it earlier this season, but the last few weeks it hasn't been good.
Right. Yeah. And it's just so strange every week. I feel like you see like one of the backs is the standout, right? Some weeks it's Mel Brown. One week it's Cam Edwards. One week Darrell Robinson. I don't know how, as great as that looks, like why is it so inconsistent? I don't know. But and I think what really is telling about this game is, Joe Fagnano does a pretty decent job, 2 touchdowns, 228 yards, but just I'm not sure if Nick Evers didn't play because of injury or because, he just felt that it was best to go Fagnano. But you have a guy like Skylar Bradley. There are talented people in that wideout room, but just the fact that they haven't been able to connect on that has been a problem. And then also, too, I mean, the secondary for UConn got absolutely torched, right? 470 yards. You can't do that. So you won't have to worry about that this weekend against UMass. And their defense did pretty well against the run. So I think that they are stacked up better against UMass. But you're in this game. You were in all 3 games you played against the ACC this year, but you got to win those, right? And Jim Mora said that today in his press conference, right? Like, there's no woulda, coulda, shouldas. We need to win.
Yeah, plain and simple. And I think they are going to have their hands full against UMass on Saturday, and we're going to break that down here in a couple minutes. But I don't think that that's going to be a walk in the park. Holy Cross finishes the season 6-6 and gains a share of the Patriot League title. Their 6th straight Patriot League title with a 34-0 win over Georgetown. Unfortunately, Lehigh beat rival Lafayette, and they won a share of the Patriot League, and they got the playoff bid. But nonetheless, a good bounce back here for Dan Curran's squad the last few weeks. They bounced back, salvaged the 500 season. Not the expectation that we have of this program, because under Bob Chesney, they went to new heights. But Dan Curran's going to get them there. You mentioned the transfer portal earlier. Both Joe Pazanski and Jordan Fuller, among others, entered the transfer portal today for Holy Cross. You've seen a lot of names in the portal, and we're going to do a little thing on Thanksgiving Day on the portal and who's in there and what we think of their chances in terms of where they could end up. But nonetheless, a nice season in Holy Cross. Not the standard. It didn't meet the standard. We know that. But to still gain a share of the Patriot League, you're going to take that. I mean, they played a really tough schedule. And in Dan Curran, we trust. He's going to get the program back to where we're accustomed to seeing it in recent years. And obviously, of course, we talked about CCSU winning the NEC. Stonehill wrapped up a disappointing season with a loss to Robert Morris. They lost 31-13. Skyhawks finished the season 1-10. You got to figure that there's going to be a couple of changes there. They're going to have to take a long look in the mirror because they were competitive their first couple of years D1. Not the case this year. And honestly, when I did my camp visit with them, Ryan, I think that Eli Gardner and his staff knew that this was going to be a young football team. There was no way around it. They were young at receiver, young on defense. Yes, you had some experience in the backfield with Asher Karaha and Xavier Woodward and Jarrell Washington. You had Cody Ruff at tight end, who certainly, looked the part and played the part at times this season. You didn't really have a lot outside of him, though. Couple that with some injury issues. This team underachieved. Should they have been better? I think so. I thought that they had enough back, especially on offense, that they could have been better. But certainly their deficiencies in some areas caught up with them.
Yeah, they lost some guys in the offensive line, which I think was a huge part this year, right? They struggled to run the ball. The quarterbacks couldn't connect, and so it's like you said,
you're not going to replace Jermaine Corbett, who had a monster season at Merrimack and is a Walter Payton finalist. So
right, yeah. So it's when you don't, and it's tough when you are someone like Stonehill, like when you're losing guys like that to pretty equal schools. They're losing guys to UNH. Merrimack. It's like,
yeah.
What is it that's leaving? Is it an opportunity to play like that? That's what I'm curious about when we get into this portal. I wish we could almost ask them, like, what did you see the writing on the walls or something that we missed coming into the season? Is it just a better opportunity? Because I doubt NIL, but so definitely frustrating. And you really got to hope this doesn't become a trend there because it does feel like it's a hard place to recruit and win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's proof that making the jump up from being a D2 school to an FCS school is not an easy jump. It's just not. And I think they made it look not easy, but they made it look possible their first 2 years in Division I. But this season they definitely took a step back. And Coach Gardner's a good coach. He's got a good staff over there. And then here's to them getting it turned around and getting the program back on track in 2025. Merrimack finishes the season with a 19-3 win over Fordham to finish 5-6. They held Fordham to only 31 yards of offense, which is, I think, pretty impressive when you look at the score there. Jermaine Corbett scored. Aiden Pereira played decent, but an impressive win for Merrimack to close out the season. Again, Fordham had minus 29 yards rushing. They only threw for 60 yards. So.
Yeah, and I picked them in our picks last week, and I couldn't feel more stupid than when I saw that stat line the next day. So, but
yeah, well, again, Fordham finished 2-10, so tough season for the Rams, but big win for Merrimack. Like I said, they finished 5-6. Played a really tough schedule. We've been talking about that all season long. They opened at Air Force. They played at UConn. They played Dartmouth. They played Maine. Coach Giannetti challenged his squad. And I think, again, like we said with Central Connecticut State earlier, I think that schedule helped them down the road. And they got better as the year went on, and they finished strong. And now they've got some momentum going into the offseason, spring ball, and into next season. You are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Saranitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Ryan Barry. I do want to remind you that if you are looking for a safe and effective protein product, well, then you need to get Yolked. Only 47 calories per packet. It's tasty, delicious, and effective. Visit yolked.com today for more information on how you can order this great product. All right. Obviously, we're done with most of the programs here, so we've got a small slate of games, and we're going to go through those real quick. By the way, we didn't talk about Boston College. Before we do that, I was going to start with BC. Eagles pick up a 41-21 win over North Carolina to become bowl eligible. Dominant effort. I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I didn't see that coming from the Eagles.
That was a shock. They were the nail in the coffin to Mac Brown's career. They'll always be able to say that, which is kind of funny to think about. And I guess the words of wisdom from Drake May on Friday night were not enough after he visited the team. But yeah, you have to give it to the job that they've done, for Bill O'Brien to be able to kind of deal with the adversity of the last few weeks and then come out and be like, actually, no, we're okay. We got people kind of under control, right? Grayson James is going to be okay. I think he did well enough, right? Kai Robichaux had a pretty good game. So
they rushed for 230 yards.
yeah, and this is against the team that you and I both were, UNC came into this game pretty hot. Like it's not like they were playing poor. That wasn't the greatest season from them, but at the same time, I think like I picked UNC last week. I was just a real loser last week. I'll tell you, looking at my picks, but like it's kind of came out of nowhere, and it was a home game. You send your fans out on top, and that's what they're going to remember, right? That's what they're going to remember when they come into the season. When it comes to donating and NIL, right? They're going to think about we beat a Tar Heels team that was coming in pretty good, and we finished, with a positive record. So.
Yeah, and of course, they wrap up the season at home on Saturday, 3 p.m. kickoff against Pitt, and that's where we'll start with previewing the 4 games on tap this weekend. We're going to start there. Of course, the Eagles are favored in this one by -5. The over-under is 48.5. Pitt was rolling along there for a while, but they have crashed and burned in the past month. They're coming into this one at 7-4. Eagles coming into this one at 6-5. Obviously, if you win 7 games, it enhances your bowl chances in terms of playing in a little bit of a more higher profile bowl. Still not going to be a big deal, but nonetheless, 7 wins, bowl appearance. As I said last night, if somehow they can win on Saturday, win their bowl game, you would take 8 wins in a bowl appearance in year 1 of the Bill O'Brien era. Look, if you had asked me a month ago, I would have probably picked Pitt, but they're not playing well right now. They're struggling coming into this one. Boston College coming off a dominant win over North Carolina, -5. I like that number. I'm going to go with the Eagles here. I think they win by 2 scores. I'm bullish on them in this one.
Wow, nice. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just too afraid to take that line, but I'm definitely taking the Eagles. I mean, looking at some of these games, other than getting blown up by Louisville, you lose by 4 to Clemson, lose by 5 to UVA, and I don't know. BC struggled against some of those teams, right? So that's what kind of makes me a little bit bullish, as you were saying. But I'm going to go with the Eagles because I picked against them last week, and that was a mistake. You're at home, you're on the mighty CW network in front of all the whoever watches the CW network. So give me the Eagles. Yeah.
They're also going to be on the ACC network. But
okay. Yeah.
The CW, listen, man, the CW network has a big following. You have a lot of dorks and nerds out there that used to watch, like, my best friend, he's big into Smallville and all these stupid shows that he used to watch. Once Upon a Time and One Tree Hill. They're all CW shows. I didn't watch them. I may not. The only reason I know about him is him. Yeah. He's that nerd that he still goes to conventions and has people sign his Smallville jacket and all this other bullshit. Wow. I have no interest in that stuff. I never have. Yeah. But those are the people that watch the CW, and I guess BC football fans, you can throw them in there. I don't know. All right. Next up, the game you're going to be at, and that's, of course, a rivalry game between UConn and UMass. Now, I believe there's now a trophy on the line in this one. So did you see that online?
I saw that. I guess it was the Massachusetts, like the NIL collective.
Yeah, the NIL.
Yeah, came and I think they just rebuilt it. I don't think that they uncovered it somewhere. But, so that's pretty cool. There's a trophy now. And as there should be. It's crazy that we don't have a name for this. I mean, we have a name for this, but we can't say it on this podcast. But if you've seen it on Twitter, but there's how is there nothing? So I think it's great that we have a trophy. Yeah,
courtesy of UMass and the UMass the Midnight Ride and NIL initiative.
Yeah. So when they say we're not contributing, I don't know. I'm going to take the Huskies. I really love the fight that UMass showed last week. Maybe this is a flip flop. Last year I thought UMass was going to win, and then UConn was coming in downtrodden and it went the other way. But I just worry about how many people are going to be at this game. With where everything is at.
Holiday weekend.
Yeah. Holiday weekend. It's, I don't know how great the weather is going to be. It's going to be cold. So give me the Huskies. I just like them. They're a bit more well-rounded at the moment. I think that they have more talent to outlast UMass. They've played well against the run, where UMass has done a lot better in the last few weeks running the ball. Jalen John is carrying the hell out of the ball right now, him and CJ Hester. But I think that UConn has just enough to kind of get it done. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it might be a 7-10 point game. I'd be bummed if it was a blowout. But
UConn's favored by 10.5, by the way.
Yeah.
The over-under is 49.5. I should have told you that.
No.
I was too busy crapping all over the CW network and my friend. But UConn by 10.5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think 10 is right around there, and that's what I think they'll probably win by. But yeah, it pains me, but I got to take the Huskies here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the Huskies here either. If I were putting money on this game, I'm tempted to take UMass as a dog, but they burned me against Missouri, and I haven't been willing to go back there since. If I'm putting money on this one, which by the way, I can't bet on this one, it's an in-state school.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UConn. I think they win by 14. I think that this is a closer game than people think, but I think this UConn football team has proven time and time again that they can that when they're playing schools that they're better than, they take care of business. Now, one thing I will caution you with though, if I weren't betting on this game, it wouldn't be a bad pick here to take UMass at that number at 10.5, because remember now, UConn had to come from behind and beat UAB. They struggled with Temple at home. They struggled with Georgia State at home. I mean, if I were not a stater, I might be tempted to take UMass at that number, but I'm not going to. I'm still going to stick to my UConn wins by 10 to 14 points here, but that's a tempting number here.
I also don't hate the over on it too, personally.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either, because I think that's a number you can hit here.
Yeah.
I think UMass can score 21 to 28 in this game. It could end up being a shootout. So
yeah.
We'll see. All right, we're going to take a look at the FCS playoff games. We're going to start off with UT Martin visiting UNH. UNH playing their best football of the season down the stretch here. They won the Bryce Collin Musket last week, beating rival Maine. That win was enough to get them an at-large playoff berth in the FCS playoffs. Does New Hampshire keep the good times rolling, or is this a one and done for them?
I'm gonna take the Wildcats. I feel like I don't know enough about the body of work for UT Martin. I mean, I do know they beat Kennesaw State this year, who is an FBS program, and really struggled this year. But they've won, I believe it's like 6 or 7 of their last 8, so they're
playing pretty well coming into it.
Yeah, they're playing good football. I mean, they've struggled against some teams. I mean, I will say, like, there's a couple of games here that you're looking at and you're like, oh, Lindenwood's not very good. You barely beat them in overtime. And, so I'm going to take the Wildcats. I hope that they're not a little bit too inflated and looking past it like, oh, we can take this. But I mean, I don't think they will. I worry about the run game still, but I'm going to take the Wildcats.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned they had a big win earlier this year against Kennesaw State, who is FBS. But other than that, when you look at their games, I mean, they barely beat Lindenwood 33-26. They lost 10-9 to Tennessee Tech. They beat Charleston Southern 40-14, but they have not been dominant by any stretch. I mean, they had a couple of games. They had a 3-game stretch in early October where their offense was humming. They beat Gardner-Webb 35-17. They beat Western Illinois 45-17, and they beat Eastern Illinois 52-17. But since then, their offense has really slowed down. They're nowhere near as prolific. They do have the ability to give this UNH defense fits. Quarterback Kincaid Dent has had a nice season for them, over 2,000 yards passing and 19 touchdown passes. So, you know what? I think when you look at this matchup, as Ricky Santos said yesterday, they don't really know anything about him. They don't have a history with him, obviously. They haven't played them. But I'm with you. I think that for UT Martin, the CAA is another level. I mean, it's one of the best conferences in FCS. UNH has played a good schedule. They play in a good conference. Give me UNH here as well. I think they advance to take on Montana State. And you know what? I'm all in on a UNH playoff run. We've seen it happen before. I think this is a good year for that. And finally, we have Central Connecticut State, who finished 7-5, visiting URI, who finished 10-2. Again, the Rams haven't made it look pretty at times this year, but they know how to play, come from behind football. They're resilient. They're tough. I believe they had, 6 games where they were trailing either in the first half or at halftime that they had to come from behind and win, including Saturdays. Look, I think CCSU has been a great story, but I do think ultimately they're going to play tough. I think this is going to be a relatively close game, but I think this URI team is just too talented. I think that's the difference. I think they win by 7 to 10 points.
Yeah, agreed. I think they're going to kind of outclass a little bit in some ways. I think they're motivated. They're playing tough, and and I think that they can beat Mercer too. So not to look too far ahead, but yeah, definitely give me the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Central Connecticut State, though, the one thing I will say, and I don't want to belabor this point, they played a really good schedule, so they know how to hang
Right.
with good teams. I think this is going to be a game. If I'm a URI fan, be prepared to go there on Saturday and sweat this thing out a little bit, because this Central Connecticut State team, you got Brady Olson at quarterback, transferred in from UMass. He's had a nice season for them. He's going to have to take care of the football, handle that URI pressure. You got Elijah Howard, who's a big back who can lean on people, and he's a guy that can wear opposing defenses down. But I think the X factor in this game is going to be that Central Connecticut State defense. As you mentioned, 7 turnovers last week. If that defense plays to the level we've seen them play throughout this season, they're going to give that URI offense some fits. Now, the question there is, for me, is can that CCSU front hold up against Malik Grant and this URI offensive line in this running game? Of course, Malik Grant is a familiar face to that defense. They played against him when he was at Sacred Heart. So that's going to be the key to the game for me. Line of scrimmage. Can Central Connecticut State defensively hold up against that running game? Because, I saw it firsthand last week. They wore Bryant down. I think they can do the same thing here to CCSU. All right, Ryan, final thoughts here before we wrap it up.
It's a bittersweet kind of full menu end, like we were saying earlier. But I'm really happy that I think last year we just had Holy Cross into the FCS playoffs because they had the automatic qualifier. So it's great to see a couple out, like UNH and URI making it in. I'm really, really happy for them. And I hope that they do some damage. I would, and same with CCSU. If they win, I won't be upset either. So. And again, we'll see what happens with UMass UConn. But still a good slate. I mean, on top of all the other fun big games that are up this weekend too.
Yeah, so. We'll have at least one, maybe 2 FCS teams competing in the playoffs again next weekend.
Right.
And next weekend, we're also going to find out who Boston College and UConn are going to be playing in their bowl game. So we still have some college football to talk about in the month of December. So don't go anywhere. Of course, for the best college football coverage in New England, make sure you follow along at anyfootballjournal.com and make sure you follow us on social media. Like I said, you're not going to get this kind of Division I college football coverage anywhere else. We're the best in the region. We take pride in it. So please follow along, and we'll make sure that we give you the best possible coverage. All right. Well, that'll do it for this week's show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Serenitas. We'll talk to you again next week. Have a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And as always, get out there and watch some football. We have pretty much reached the finish line. Don't let the season go by with you not getting to a game. That's what I'm trying to say. So get to a game. Peace.